Okay, in this video we are doing the May 2022 SAT Math Calculator section. I think there are 38 questions. It's probably going to be a long video. I'm going to go through the problems trying to explain how I think anyone could do them. So it's not necessarily the way that I would do it if I were trying to blow through the test in some sort of record time. But I think it'll be useful to anyone watching if you are looking to practice or see a different perspective. So let's take a look. Number one, the function f is defined by f of x equals 9x minus 16. What is the value of f of 3? This is just asking you to take 3 and replace every x that you see with 3. So we're going to have f of 3 is going to be 9 times 3 minus 16. This is the calculator section, so you should really just do this on a calculator, even though it's like pretty straightforward. It's 27 minus 16 is 11. But again, on the calculator section, like use your calculator when you can. But you'll see like some of the questions, like this is a good example where the calculator isn't exactly what you want to just dive for. So this is number 2. 6x minus 7 equals 12. Which equation has the same solution as the given equation? So they could make this a lot harder, but it looks like what they've done is, if you look at the answer choices, they all start with 6x. We really just need to get 6x by itself in the equation that we were given. So we have 6x minus 7 equals 12. And then I'm going to add 7 to both sides, right? And get 6x is equal to 19. So this is a problem where you could have solved for x and then gone back and looked at the answer choices and had to deal with that. Like which one of them actually gives you an equal quantity. Not worth it though, right? So always read the problem and really see what you're being asked to do. All right, number 3. Oh, sorry. Yeah, circle that. All right. The graph of the linear function f is shown. What is the y-intercept of the graph of f? Let me tell you, they love y-intercepts. You better know how to find a y-intercept on this thing. So that y-intercept is at 2, right? It's definitely less than 3 and bigger than 0. So the answer is definitely 0, 2. There's really not much to be done on this, but as I mentioned, you better know these. They show up on the SAT all the time, much more often, I would say, than x-intercepts. So y-intercept always, you take x equals 0, plug it in, see what you get. So it's always going to be the ordered pair 0, f of 0. Also on the graph, it's just where you hit the y-axis. So for example, this graph, or the one that we just did, just look for where you're hitting the y-axis, maybe circle it so that your brain really acknowledges what the value is, and you can go from there. But let's take a look at the next one. The graph of the linear function p is shown. Which equation defines p, right? So there are answer choices, and that's something to always keep in mind as you're doing this. So since there are answer choices, we can just start eliminating them. So for example, that y-intercept again, right, is at positive 5. So I know that the equation is basically y equals mx plus b, where b is the y-intercept. So 5 has to be the y-intercept. So you can go through and just cross out anything that doesn't have 5 as the y-intercept. Now you got to deal with the slope, right? So this is a pretty steep looking function, which means the slope should be a big number, either positive or negative, negative in this case. So you could just pick a at this point, but you can also make yourself a little triangle, and then from the triangle, you can see that you're going down 3, you're going over 1. So it's like delta y over delta x is negative 3 over 1. Our slope is definitely negative 3. Our answer is definitely a. And that's the way that I would deal with that. I would do kind of an elimination process. So I would look, I'd find the y-intercept, which is going to be 0b or 0f of 0, as we talked about in the previous problem. And then we know the equation is y equals mx plus b. It's very important that you know that equation going into this. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. And then I would just count boxes for the slope. So like you can use the slope formula, but more often than not, you can actually just count boxes on these sorts of problems. So the slope will be delta y over delta x. All right, let's look at another one. Of the 50 states in the United States, 12 states are in the Midwest region. What percent of states in the United States are in the I can't say Midwest apparently, region. Okay, so they're giving you all the information that you need. Like you didn't have to walk in knowing how many states there are or anything. There are 12 states in the Midwest. There are 50 total states. So it's like if you took a quiz and you didn't do very well on it and you only got 12 out of the 50 available points, you can always recontextualize these problems to be something that you recognize. I find that with students' grades or something, they very much understand. So 12 out of 50. So this is a calculator question. Grab your calculator and punch it in if you need to. Another thing you can do if you want to save a little bit of time is just double each of those so that you get a denominator of 100. And then percents out of 100 are very easy, right? It's just the numerator, so 24% is what we've gotten here. So I forgot to circle this. Okay, now next up, question 6 and 7 refer to the following information. So t is equal to 0.32x plus 0.29y. I don't like the way that they give you the equation before they explain what's in the equation, but that's okay. Janice raises chickens. She uses the equation shown to estimate the total daily feed intake T in pounds. So it's really important when you're reading it. It's like T is a part of the equation. T is daily feed intake in pounds, right? They're telling you what to do. For X males, and then Y females, X male and Y female chickens. I'm so bad at reading the questions, it turns out, that are between 28 and 35 days old. The 28 to 35 days old is just extraneous information that you do not need. So question 6 says, using the given equation, Janice estimates that the total daily feed intake, so I'm using orange for this, is 90 pounds. So she's basically telling, or whatever, the problem is telling us that T, the daily feed intake, is 90 pounds. Now, if Janice has 100 male chickens, so X is for males, 100 male chickens, how many female chickens does she have? So what we want to do is take the values that we're given, plug them in, and find the value we don't know, right? So 90 is T, 0.32. We're told that X is 100, and then we have to do 0.29 times Y, and Y is what we want to figure out. So this is a calculator question. You can definitely use your calculator to solve this. You could solve this by graphing. I just moved everything to one side because I actually think in a lot of cases it's faster to kind of like do the math. So I have this. And now I would 100% pick up my calculator because I have no idea what this is. But my calculator told me that that worked out to 200. So I recommend that you, when it's convenient, actually do the math. It's a lot faster to go through and do the math than it is to like constantly be using the calculator for things that you don't necessarily need. But if you need it, go for it because our objective here is to get the problem correct. It doesn't so much matter how we do it, which is like a sad fact of the SAT. It's all about like getting the answer. The process, it's a standardized test. When else are you going to use this? All right, same setup. Question 7. Which equation estimates the total weekly feed intake, W, in pounds for X male and Y female chickens that are between 28 and 35 days old? Okay, so days old. Man, they're not old. All right, so we're looking for the total daily feed intake. Well, total weekly feed intake, right? So we are given the total daily. We know that there are 7 days in a week. Hopefully we know that. They think you know that because they didn't tell you that. They did tell you there were 50 states, so they make some assumptions and not others. So we're looking for the total weekly, 7 days in a week. T is the amount that you get in one day. So really we're looking for 7 times T. 7 times T is not an option, but if you look at it, T is that weird thing, right? It's 0.32x plus 0.29y. So we're looking for 7 times that. We're looking for D as our answer. Also, you can look at the answer choices and just kind of like eliminate some of them, I think. So for example, B and C look absurd to me. Like, why am I doing something just to the male chickens in that case? I don't know why I'd be doing that. A is like, I don't know what you're doing. You're taking the amount they eat per day and dividing it by 7. So like how much they eat in 1/7 of a day. Again, kind of ridiculous. Keep in mind at all times you are taking a multiple choice exam. And so, work with the answer choices. Generally speaking, as a teacher, that annoys me. But also, as somebody trying to get you ready for this test, use every advantage that you have. All right, so that's our answer. Number 8, the function g is defined by g of x equals 4x squared minus 3. Now, you're probably thinking they're going to ask you to plug something into g. Not the case here. They're saying for what positive value of x is g of x equal to 13. So this is kind of the opposite. They're telling you g of x is 13, so take the g of x that's up above and replace it with 13, and we get an equation. We get 4x squared minus 3 equals 13. You can solve this on a calculator. You can graph this on a calculator. I'm just going to solve it by hand because I actually, in this particular instance, think it'd be faster for me to do that. But again, if you want to use a calculator, do it. Like, what's the hang up, right? So I get x squared is 4, so either x is plus or minus 2. But we know that we're supposed to get positive. Also, the answer choices are all positive, so there's like nothing you could do at that point. We have to choose the positive. So I'm getting 2. That's my answer. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Oh, well, alternatively, if you really wanted, you could take all of the answer choices. This is like, I don't know, if you have extra time, maybe I would do this. This seems like it'll take a while. Take each answer choice and plug it in for x in g of x. Like, for example, for 2, you would do g of 2 is 4 times 2 squared minus 3, which is 13, and you would get the answer on the first shot. But what if you do one of those weird things where you're like, I'm always going to start with d or whatever? I don't know what the logic of that is, or like the data analysis that tells some people to do things like that. Then you'd be plugging in a lot of stuff. So for example, if I plugged in b, it would be g of 4 is 4 times 4 squared. That's 4 times 16, which is 64 minus 3, 61. I don't really want to do it, but it'll work. And again, whatever gets you the answer on this thing. All right, next up. In triangle ABC, the measure of angle A is 23 degrees. The measure of angle B is 97 degrees. In triangle D, I feel like I should draw a triangle at this point because like it's a lot of information, right? We have a triangle ABC. When I draw triangles, I don't generally care about the scale being correct. Like I'm not trying to get these angles to look what they are, but you might want to. So A is 23 and B is 97. Knowing that, it means that automatically, because the angles add up to 180, the missing angle C could be identified, right? So 97 plus 3 is 100, plus 20 is 120, 180 minus 120 is 60. So we can identify the third angle here. In triangle DEF, the measure of angle D is 23 degrees, and the measure of angle E is 97 degrees, which are exactly the same numbers that we were given before. So I'm going to draw another triangle. We got D, we got E. I'm trying to orient them the same way at this point, right? D is 23, E is 97. So 23, 97, and again, we could get that this is 60. Which of the following additional piece of information is needed to determine whether the triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF? So similarity for triangles just requires that 2 of their angles be the same, and I'm going to write that down in a lot of detail pretty soon. But if you look at the other answer choices, like we knew by reading the problem that we could find C. No one needs to give us that. We could find F. No one needs to give us that. So look at the answers. Do you need to be given C? No. Do you need to be given B? No. I'm sorry, F, angle F, which is option B. And then the measure of angle C and angle F, we found those. No one needed to give them to us. So the answer had to be D at that point. So even though I do know that the answer is no additional information, I also know the reason is because of the angle-angle similarity. I guess it's a theorem. Been a while since I did geometry. I think that's a theorem. If 2 angles of a triangle are congruent to 2 angles of a second triangle, the triangles are similar. Even though we do know the math behind it, we would have had to pick that no matter what. All right, let's take a look at number 10. Which of the following linear equations is the most appropriate model for the data shown in the scatter plot? I really wish that I remembered how to read today. I think it would be making this whole process a little easier, but whatever, not happening. All right, so I'm going to just draw a line that looks like it goes through these points because that's a line of best fit, or an appropriate model, the best appropriate model. Boom, there's my line. Okay, so looking at that, I can see that my model definitely has a negative slope, like for sure. So look at the answer choices. Option B and option D have positive slopes, right? Because the coefficient of x is the slope. So in B, the slope is 1. In D, the slope is 1. The slope should be negative. So let's get rid of those. Now the question comes down again to the y-intercept. According to ETS or whoever makes this test, the most important of the intercepts by miles. I don't know. That y-intercept is up at like 6. So it definitely has a positive y-intercept, which actually is enough in this scenario, but I would say it's around 6. So if you look at our options, A has a y-intercept of 6. C has a y-intercept of -6. Cannot be the answer. So again, we can use process of elimination. They tried to fool us here by instead of writing mx plus b, they wrote b plus mx. That's not going to fool us, but that's the end of question 10. Okay, on to question number 11 here. The current density in a wire is defined as the current in milliamperes flowing through the wire divided by the cross-sectional area of the wire in square millimeters. What is the current density? So we're trying to find current density, which we were just told is milliamperes divided by square millimeters. I'm going to use that to solve this problem. What is the current density in milliamperes per square millimeter in a copper wire with a cross-sectional area of 6 square millimeters when a current of 15 milliamperes flows through the wire. Okay, so here's how I set this up. I know milliamperes is going to be a part of this, and then I also know that I'm supposed to take that and divide it by square millimeters. So I just set that up, and then I look through the problem and I find like the given milliamperes and I find the given square millimeters and plug them in. So 15 milliamperes, so that's 15, and then we're going to divide by 6 square millimeters. And I get, whoa, just dropped my whole iPad there. Hope everything's okay. So I get this, 15 over 6, grab a calculator, and you will see that that is 2.5. This type of problem can be a little bit scary because it's like, what are these units? Who knows? But they have to give you enough information within the problem for you to be able to solve it. And because of that, you can do it. Do I know like what current density is off the top of my head? I do not. But I was still able to solve this by using kind of like dimensional analysis or like analyzing the units on the problem. I think that's a really important skill, especially when you run into things you don't quite know how to do. Let's take a look at the next one. All right, what is the radius of a circle in the xy plane with equation quantity x minus 9 squared plus quantity y minus 3? That should definitely be squared. That must be a typo. Equals 64. Okay, so what do we know about circles? Well, hopefully we know that the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. From this equation, you get two pieces of information. You get that the center is hk, so not negative h, negative k, just hk is the center. And you get that the radius is the number r. So the number you're looking for is r, not r squared, but the number you're given is r squared. So in this case, that is r squared. R squared is 64, which means that r is either plus or minus 8, but it's a radius of a circle, so it's definitely 8. Also, all the answer choices are positive, so we just choose 8. The equation of a circle is one that you've got to walk in knowing for sure. So write that down, memorize it. It'll serve you well. All right, let's look at number 13. If 6 over x plus 1 is equal to 3, what is the value of x plus 1? Again, they like asking for not x, but some other thing, right? So in this case, we're looking for x plus 1. Conveniently, x plus 1 is already in the problem. So if we just take the given, 6 over x plus 1 is equal to 3, but I'm going to say 3 over 1 because I want to deal with two fractions. And I'm just going to like cross multiply here. So, I do 6 times 1, and I do 3 times the quantity x plus 1. I'm trying to solve for x plus 1, divide both sides by 3, and I get 2 is equal to x plus 1, which is the answer that I'm looking for. So always keep your eye kind of on the ball. Like, what are we looking for as we're solving this? We're looking for x plus 1, not x. All right, let's look at the next one. Fahari kicks a ball on the ground into the air. 1 second after being kicked, the ball reaches its maximum height of 16 feet above the ground. So I think they just told us an ordered pair, and I think it's an important ordered pair. So 1 second, we get a maximum height of 16 feet. All right, so, and 2 seconds after being kicked, the ball's back on the ground. A quadratic function. Okay, so what do we know about quadratics? They have a vertex. They have like an a value that's a coefficient. And also look at the answer choices. It gives you the general form of this if you get nervous during the test and you forget. So we're just looking for the equation, right? I think that information, 1 second, 16 feet, is the vertex, right? It's the maximum height. The maximum or minimum of a quadratic is always the vertex. So our vertex is 116. We should also know going into the test, y is equal to a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k. Feels related to the circle equation later in math, or maybe you already know it. It is related to the circle equation in a special way. Does not matter for the SATs. Y is equal to a, the quantity x minus h squared plus k. The vertex in this case is hk, just like for our circle, it was hk. So I'm just going to look through the answer choices and find a vertex, right? So here our vertex would be 16, 1, which is the opposite. Here it would be 116. Here it's -1, -16. And then -16, -1. Only one of those is 116. That's our answer. You don't need to worry about the value of a in this case because if you look at all the options, they all have -16 as the value of a. So don't stress over things that you like can't control or don't really need to know. Let's look at the next one. All right. Scatterplot shows the relationship between two variables, x and y. A line of best fit shown is also shown. Reading, man. A line of best fit is also shown. For how many of the data points is the actual y value at least 1 greater than the y value predicted by the line? Okay, so at least 1 greater means it's going to be 1 or more. And then it's then the y value predicted by the line. So all the points that are on the line, you can see the line, all the points on the line are the predicted value. We are looking for where the actual value, the actual point that's just in space or in the plane, is 1 or more above that line. So you can see that happens at these 2 points. These are the only 2 points where that happens. And so our answer is B. I will be honest with you, when I do these practice tests, I get a lot of this type of question wrong because there's like a couple of ways that you can misread it. So make sure you're keeping track of like, is it supposed to be the predicted value bigger, the predicted value smaller? Is it supposed to be bigger or smaller? Those are like the 4 ways that I get it wrong. And also sometimes they ask you for the fraction and I definitely get that wrong. But that's, that's that problem. All right, let's take a look at question number 16. We have a 3,000 piece rectangular jigsaw puzzle that has 216 edge pieces and the rest are inside pieces. The equation 48r plus 216 is equals 3,000 describes the situation where r represents the number of rows that contain inside pieces. Okay, which of the following is the best interpretation of 48r in this context? So I'm looking at the equation, looking at the given information, and I noticed this 216 is showing up 2 times. So like I know that 216 is inside pieces. No, it isn't. It's edge pieces, which means whatever's left over must just be inside pieces. And I think you can just answer the question. But if you want to, you can also like draw a picture to kind of represent it. So this would be my puzzle, right? There's like the outer edge and then there's whatever else. So we know the 216 is the edge pieces because we're told that. Now, 216 is part of the total 3,000. 48r is the rest of the total 3,000. So 48r must just be these pieces. So it must be the case that there are 48r inside pieces. I don't know what else to say about this. It like feels like it could be a tricky question, but I think if you draw a picture to kind of visualize it, kind of makes it a little easier. All right, let's look at 16. Nope, let's look at 17, which is the next problem. Which ordered pair xy is a solution to the given system of inequalities in the xy plane? I don't really think there's a way to do this without subbing in, at least not a good way. So I'm just going to start subbing in, right? When you're convinced it's the only way to do it, and it's going to maybe take a little while, like jump in and start doing it. So what I like to do is kind of like label up the equation so that I know what I'm doing, right? So both of them must be true. So I must get true statements out of both of them. So for A, for example, I'm taking -2, 3. When I take -2, 3, I end up with 3 is less than 7. 3 is less than 7, so it's still an option. For part 2, I would have to have 2, which is 2, the y value. It should be 3. I don't know. So why have I written this here? I got 2 is less than 1/2. So if y is equal to 3, it should be that 3 is less than -3 is less than 2. It's still not true, but I'm pretty sure my work there is wrong. I think I took point B and plugged it in for that, maybe not even. Anyway, I think that work should say 3 is less than 2, which is still not true, so that is still an x, but I think my work is suspect there. So cancel that one out. All right, let's look at B. All right, so when we plug in 2, we'll get 2 is less than -2 when I plug into 1. 2 is less than -2. 2 is not less than -2, so B cannot be the answer. When I take 0, 2, 2 is less than 1 will be when I plug that in to option 1. So you can see it's an effective method. You can also see that as a test taker, I make mistakes sometimes. Sometimes I'm lucky and they don't lead me down the wrong path. Sometimes I'm unlucky. But in this case, I've ruled out A, B, and C. So the answer is D. And I don't think you need to do any more work. I would just circle that and move on, right? I mean, if you test it, it's obviously going to work. Is it obvious? I don't know. 1 is less than 4. That's definitely true. 1 is less than 1.5. That's also true. So it does work. But again, if you've ruled out 3 out of 4 answer choices, the 4th one has to be the answer. don't waste your time on that unless you think you might have made a mistake, right? Like in A, I made a mistake. I got lucky. If I had still checked everything, so if I thought A was the answer and I checked D and thought D was the answer, I'd have to double check. So it would have saved me in that case if I wasn't trying to blow through the test, but I probably would have been trying to blow through the test and I would have gotten this wrong if I had not gotten lucky. So luck plays a role. That's why you probably take it more than once, right? All right, next up. The table shows the results of a poll that was used to determine support for a county proposal. So this just has a lot of words. The results are categorized by county and opinion. If one person who responded to the poll is selected at random, which of the following statements results in the greatest value? This is a question that I hate because you basically have to go through the answer choices. So A is the probability that the person is undecided, given that the person is from county 1. Okay, so we're looking at just county 1, right? Given that means just look at the people from there. So county 1. Now we need the undecideds. There's 95 undecideds. So A is going to be 95 there's a total of 1,601 people in county 1. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go through and do that for all of them. The probability that the person is undecided given the person is from county 2. So county 2 is here. Undecided, 91. County 2 has 1,144. And again, you have to do all of them. I know it's inconvenient, but what are you going to do? Option C, the probability the person is from county 1, given that the person is undecided. So now we're going with the undecided column, and we want to know the person is from county 1. How many people in this column are from county 1? 95. So that's going to be 95 out of the total 186 undecideds. And then for D, it's going to be the probability the person's from county 2, given that the person is undecided. So I've circled or boxed undecided again, and now we need them to be from county 2, which is 91 people. So we'll get 91 out of 186. Now we're looking for the biggest number, and I think you can look at these and just say that C is definitely the biggest number because A and B are very small, right? That's not a lot of people, 95 out of 1601, 91 out of whatever. Whereas C and D are both almost 1/2, and C is clearly larger than D, right? 95 is bigger than 91, and they have the same denominator. So I think C is the answer. If you don't like that, though, you can just punch them in. It's not a crime, right? So C is the answer. That is the largest of the available options here. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Number 19, the bar graph shows the number of commercials Albert saw each day that he watched television last week. For these 5 days, how much greater is the mean number? Mean is just average, right? So that just, every time you see mean, just say the average number of commercials per day. Then the median, that's the number that's totally in the middle when you line them all up, right? From smallest to largest, the number dead center is the median. So we want to know how much bigger the mean is than the median. So first up, you have to read this bar chart and figure out what's going on. So I think the numbers are 16, 5, 7, 8, and 14. Those are the numbers. Now what I need to do to find the median is I need to put them in order. So let's do that. 5, then 7, then 8, then 14, then 16. The median is the one that's in the middle, right? So we now know the median is definitely 8, right? There are 2 smaller, there are 2 bigger, it's in the middle, it's the median. We also need to know the mean. The mean, you just add them up and divide, right? So it's 5 total days, and we have to do 5 plus 7 plus 8 plus 14 plus 16. You have a calculator. You should use a calculator on this, but I'm also pretty sure that you get 50 divided by 5. So I think you get 10 there. So that is the mean. And we're just looking to do how much greater is the mean than the median. So one thing to look out for here is if you got the median wrong and maybe you thought it was 14 or something, you would have gotten a negative, right? Because the mean would not be bigger. The mean has to be bigger. In this case, we're just doing 10 minus 8. So we don't need to talk about that too much, but 10 minus 8 is definitely 2. And so that is our answer. Let's look at one more. And then more and more. We're looking at all of them, so I don't know why I said it that way. Oh my God, I feel like this is just a reading contest at this point. A county school board in a certain state is proposing a start time of 7:30 a.m. That seems so early. A sample of 100 high school students, okay, so we're sampling, is selected at random from all high school students in the county. So it's 100 high school students selected from all high school students in the county. The selected students were asked whether they approved of the proposed change. 70 students responded they did not approve. I mean, that's crazy. Why would 70... They must already start Oh, no, they don't approve, right? So they're probably trying to move it back. Which of the following is the largest population to which the results of the survey can be generalized? So, like, where did they get the students from? They got them from the county, which means at most you could generalize this to the county. If they had gotten them from the United States, you could try to generalize it to the United States. If they got it from everyone in Europe, you could generalize it to Europe. That's how you answer questions like this. So the 70 students who responded, that's ridiculous. The 100 students who were surveyed, that's not really how statistics works, because then you're not really generalizing. You're just saying this is the result. All the high school students in the county versus all the high school students in the state. So they only pulled from one county, so you can only really generalize to one county. So our answer here is definitely C. All right, let's take a look at the next question. So questions 21 and 22 refer to the following information. The bar graph shown summarizes the total number of businesses in thousands and the total number of tourism-related businesses, also in thousands, in Iceland for each of 7 years. What an interesting piece of data. All right, let's see. So question 121 says, tourism-related businesses employed 13.5 thousand people in Iceland in 2009. So that's the total number of people. And we are looking for which of the following is closest to the mean or the average. Right, it's really important you recognize that mean just means average. Number of employees per tourism-related business in Iceland. So I'm going to need to know the total number of tourism-related businesses. And so it's going to be 13.5 divided by something. There we go. So in 2009, the tourism is the light gray. So 0.58 thousand of these companies. Fortunately, they're not asking us to like convert units on this. So we're doing 13.5 thousand divided by 0.58 thousand. We would definitely use a calculator on this. And that's about 23. So we get 23, what is it? It's employees per tourism-related business. Seems reasonable, right? If we had gotten like, all the answer choices seem reasonable, so not really a big deal. I was going to say if we got like 1,000, that seems unreasonable, but not an answer choice. All right, let's look at the next one. So same graph, same info. In 2008... what percentage of the total businesses in Iceland were tourism related? All right, so one of the columns is total. So let's look, that's 2008. The dark one is total. So there's 2.6 total, 2.6 thousand. And then 0.52 is the tourism related one. So we'll just do tourism divided by total, right? So 0.52 divided by 2.6, calculator question for sure. I was a little surprised when the answer to this was 0.2. I don't know. Sometimes fractions are weird. So that's 20%. So 20% of the businesses were tourism related, which seems very high, but I guess that's what Iceland is like. All right, let's look at the next one. The heat capacity of a substance is the amount of energy in joules required to raise temperature of 1 gram in grams of the substance by 1 degree Celsius. All right, so the heat capacity of water is 4.2 J per G times C. That's basically all you need to know here, right? So we got 4.2 J over G times degrees Celsius, or C's, right? Now, the question is, how do we use this, right? Approximately how much energy in joules, so our answer should be J, is required to raise the temperature of 1 G. So if I want to get rid of the G that's in the denominator of those units, I'm going to have to multiply by G. So I'm going to do times 1G of water from 22 degrees to 30 degrees. So that's a difference of 8. And if you look at it, it says it's the amount used to raise it 1 degree. So we're trying to raise it 8 degrees. So 8 degrees in Celsius. And again, it's J over G times degrees Celsius. If I'm going to get rid of that degrees Celsius in the denominator, I need to multiply by degrees Celsius. So I'm going to multiply by 8. So the G's will cancel, and the degrees Celsius will cancel, and we will get 4.2 times 1 times 8. So cancel those. 4.2 times 8 is, I use a calculator, but 33.6. And then the closest answer is 34. So that would be our answer. This reminds me of the one we just recently did with the milliamperes or whatever, where again, I didn't really know what the question was asking, but I just used dimensional analysis, like looking at the units to get the answer, and that's how I'd recommend you do it. All right, let's take a look at the next one. The given equation models the value of an antique dresser T years, so T is in years, after its restoration, where T is between 0 and 5. Which of the following equations best models the value of the dresser M months after its restoration, where M is between 0 and 60? Okay, so there's like a lot of math that you can know about this, but I think we can deal with this in a slightly better way as far as like the SAT is concerned. So here's what I know for sure, kind of, is that 1 year is 12 months, right? So using the given equation, which you plug years into, that would mean that at 1 year, we're looking at 1,000 times 1.05 to the first. So 1 year is 12 months. All of the answer choices involve months. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug 12 into all of those and see which ones are equivalent to 1,000 times 1.05. So I'm not really using a calculator on this. I'm just going to go for it, right? So for the first one, I'll get 1,000 divided by 12 times 1.05 to the 12th. That doesn't look anything like what we got before. 1,000 times 1.05 to the first. That's not the answer. And then just keep going, right? So this will be 1,000 times 1.05. Where'd the exponent go? It's just like gone. But this is an option, right? So that's still in the running. C will be 1,000, 1.05 to the first. That's also in the running, right? So one of those is probably the answer choice. And then D will get 1,000, 12 times 12, 12 times 12 is 144. I accidentally wrote 24, but like this is even more off. I get lucky sometimes when I'm wrong. You maybe have noticed that. Like if I had done this wrong in a way where I got to the first again, I'd have more things to worry about. That should have said to the 144 because we're plugging in 12, right? So that's what it should have said. But anyway, that's out. So now I'm going to think about 2 years, right? So I still have two options. I need to choose between them. 2 years, 24 months. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back and plug in, right? So if I plug into B, so 2 years, I should be getting, this is from the original, right? 1,000, 1.05 to the second. That's what I'm looking, that's my target, right? So if I plug into this, I'm going to get 1,000, 1.05. 24 divided by 12 is 2, so I just get that. That is not equivalent, so this is not the answer, which means that C is the answer. If you need to, you can keep going and like plug in and check, especially if D had like particularly screwed me over and I thought that it was an answer choice, I would have had to keep going. And hopefully I would have like realized at that point, but I think that C is the answer. So that's how I would handle that problem. Even if I were taking the test, I wouldn't try to like work out what these models represent or anything like that. I would just like go for it. But you know, you get to pick and choose. All right, let's look at the next one. So the quantity x minus 5 squared plus 10 times the quantity x minus 5 plus 25 is 0. The question is, how many distinct real solutions does the given equation have? Okay, so I'm going to do this kind of like using math, which is what like, that's what I want to do because, you know, I'm like very much in my element when I'm doing it. I don't necessarily think this is the best way to do it. So like u squared plus 10u plus 25 is 0. U squared plus 10u plus 25 actually factors into the quantity u plus 5 squared. And because of that, we know that u plus 5 is equal to 0. So that means that u is equal to negative 5, but then u is x minus 5. So x minus 5 is negative 5, which means that x is 0, and that's the only answer. So the answer is definitely 1. However, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I actually think the best way to do it is probably to graph and just count the x-intercepts, right? So if I take that equation, the left-hand side, and just graph it, you can visually see there's only one answer here. And I do think that that is a superior way of solving this particular problem. All right, let's look at the next one. One of the two equations in a linear system is given. The system has exactly one solution. So in my mind, that means that the linear equations involved have different slopes. They just need to be not the same slope. Doesn't really matter what they are as long as they're not the same. Which equation can be the other equation in the system? All right, so what I would do, I think, is rearrange these so that they look the same. Maybe I would do this. So, this was my first thought, was the 4x minus y equals 3 is literally the same equation. So those would have an infinite number of solutions. The same equation intersects itself an infinite number of times. That cannot be the answer. So then it's like, What else do we know? Well, we got 4x minus y is equal to 5. Those are going to be parallel, right? As long as you have 4x minus y on one side and then different numbers, they're never going to hit each other. So that would be 0 solutions. Now it just comes down to the other ones. So this one you can multiply through by a negative and get 4x minus y again. But then it equals negative 6, which is a number different from 3, which means again we have parallel. I mean, at that point you were going to get parallel or you were going to get infinite. So there's no solutions here, which makes C our answer. I don't know if I actually think that's the best way to do it. I might think the best way to do this is to very quickly go through the answers and just rewrite them in slope-intercept form, like y equals mx plus b. So for the first one, you're going to add 4x to both sides. For the second one, you can kind of add y to both sides. For the third one, you subtract 4x from both sides. And then for the fourth one, again, I would just like add y and subtract 5. So looking at these, I'm now going to do this to the given, right? So this is 4x minus 3. I need the one that has a different slope. Look at them. You get 4x, 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 negative 4x. So can't be, can't be, can't be. And C is the answer. I actually think that's a better way to do it than like my first instinct. But whatever method works for you. All right, let's take a look at the next one. A drawing of an object has a scale where a length of 4 inches on the drawing represents an actual length of 9 feet. So we got 4 inches to 9 feet. I should probably just set up a thing there, right? So 4 inches divided by 9 feet is kind of like our conversion factor. And then the actual length of the object is 12y feet. So now you want to really be careful. 12y is in feet, so that goes where 9 is, like, so it's going to be in the denominator. And then the question is, what's the actual length in inches, right? So that's going to go in the numerator. So I'm going to call that x, I guess. So x over 12y. Multiply both sides by 12y. And we're going to get x is 48y over 9. And then both of those are multiples of 3. So I'm going to divide everything I see by 3. 16y over 3. And I'm going to pick the answer. All right, let's take a look at the next one. The dot plots shown each represent a data set. Which of the following statements best compares the means and the standard deviations of the two sets? So first up, deal with the means, right? Because you probably have a better handle on that anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it like the bottom data set, everything is just 4 dots. And because everything is 4 dots in the bottom data set, if I can like rearrange the top data set so that everything just has 4 dots in each column, that would mean that they have the exact same numbers and they would have the same mean. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm trying to do this visually. So you got like 2 dots, 5 dots, 6 dots, 5 dots, and 2 dots in comparison to just 4 dots everywhere. So here's what I did. From the 6 dots, I took 2 away and I put 1 on each of the 2s, right? And then from the 5s, I took 1 away and put on like the closest 2, right? So right now in my mind, those columns are like 3, 4, 6, 4, 3. And then from 6, I take 1, put it there. That makes that column 4. Take 1 there, it makes that column 4. Now they're the same, right? They all have just 4. So I'm trying to do this in like a very visual way, but also maybe not describing it in a very good way. But that's what I'm trying to do, like balance it out, right? Like make it so that they look exactly the same, and then you would know their means are equal. So the means are definitely equal, which means if you look at the answer choices, A says the means are equal, B says the means are equal, C eventually says the mean of A is less than B, and D eventually says the mean of A is greater than B. C and D cannot be the answer. Those are gone. Now we got to deal with this standard deviation idea. So I look at the original thing before I started like mentally rearranging, and I think to myself, in data set A, most of the points are really close to the middle, right? And so because they're really close to the middle, the data is just generally less spread out. In data set B, it's spread out quite a bit, right? Like there's extra points on like the wings at 10 and at 30. So for A, I would say that in set A, there are more points closer to the middle. And when that happens, when your points all kind of like cluster up together, you get a smaller deviation, which means that set A has a smaller deviation than set B. I don't think I'm doing a great job of explaining this, but I do think that if you look at the answer choices, it makes A the answer. So A just has less of a deviation because more of the points are kind of like close together. If they were spread out like they are in B, the deviation just gets bigger. Like on average, data point is farther from the average of these things. So I think that A is the answer choice there. I don't really like the way that I explained it, but hopefully it was helpful to you. All right, let's look at the next. The expression 0.7x represents the result of decreasing a positive quantity x by what percent? So this is like a weird question. So 0.7x, I mean, I just look at them like 0.7x. I can rewrite that in like a fraction form and say that it's like 70 out of 100 times x. And if it's 70 out of 100, that means like, you know, you got like, think about grades again, right? If you get 70 out of 100, you got 70% of them. So like 70% of it's left. And then the question that we're being asked is how much did it decrease by? Well, like we lost 30%. So I would say that the expression decreasing a positive quantity by what percent? It decreases it by 30%. I do think you have to like read that kind of carefully, but I think that's how it goes. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So the graph of y equals f of x plus 1 is shown. Which equation defines the function f? All right, so in my mind, I'm looking for f, which is 1 less than the graph that I'm given. I think I can actually do this by just looking at points, right? So there's the point 0.2, and there's the point 1.4. The actual function is 1 smaller than that, right? Because I took the function and added 1 to get those points. So because of that, I'm going to like think, well, what would the point on f have been, right? So the point on f is 1 less. So it would be at 1.3, right? If it's at 1.3 and I add 1 to the y coordinate, it ends up at 4, so that kind of makes sense. And then this point would have been at 0.1, so that when I added 1 to it, it would go up to 0.2. So then I'm just going to take these and plug them in. So if I plug in x equals 0, right, because I know the point at 0. If I plug in x equals 0, I get 0.1, that works. I get 0.1, that works. I get 0.2, which is not the point I'm supposed to get for f of x. That's the point that I got on f of x plus 1. And then I would get 0.3, which again, not what I'm looking for. So then let's just plug in 1, right? One of these has to be the answer. If I plug in 1 here, I get 1.2, which is not what I was looking for, so that's out. Obviously, B is the answer at that point, but if I plug in anyway, I get 1.3, which is what I was expecting. So I think you can do this by looking at points. I actually think that's the safest way to do this problem. I always try to do it in like a mathy way, and like it's more like I get them right 90% of the time instead of 100% of the time. So I think picking points in this particular case is the way to go. All right, let's take a look at the next one. You could also technically do this by graphing. I think like take all of the options and just graph all of them plus 1 and see which one matches up. But again, then at that point you're just plotting points again, I think. You can also think about it. I mean, like that's an option, but I feel like if you thought you could think about it, you would just like dive in and do that immediately. And as I said, I am not as accurate when I do that as I am when I just plug in points and check them. And it doesn't take very long once you get used to it. But again, it's up to you. You can solve these however you think is the best way to solve them. Next question. So these are the grid-in questions. There are no more answer choices, which means we definitely need to like know the math. But also, I find these questions are usually a little bit easier. So we'll see. Over a period of 1 year, 2 points on opposite sides of a mid-ocean ridge move a distance of 4 centimeters farther apart. What is this distance in meters? So this, again, this is like the one about like milliamperes or whatever, or the one we just did with joules and degrees Celsius and whatever. Same idea, but like more basic. So we got 4 centimeters, and it's literally telling us that 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So we need to end up with meters, so that needs to go in the numerator, 1 meter per 100 centimeters. You'll cancel the centimeters, you get 4 over 100, basically, and 4 over 100 is 0.04, but you have a calculator, so don't do it in your head. Don't trust yourself. That's the takeaway when you have a calculator available to you, is like, don't bother trusting yourself, because what if you make that mistake? You're gonna be kicking yourself for a while. All right, let's look at the next one. If 7 times the quantity x minus 3 is equal to 2 times the quantity x minus 3, what is the value of x minus 3? So again, they're not asking for x, they're asking for something being done to x, and in this case, they want what's x minus 3. based on what we're given, 7 times x minus 3 is equal to 2 times x minus 3. If I subtract 2 times the quantity x minus 3, if you would prefer, you could replace every x minus 3 with like a, right? You'd have 7a equals 2a, you would subtract, you get 5a equals 0, which means that a is equal to 0, and then a was x minus 3. I didn't do that. I just kept x minus 3 because I thought it was easier. So I get this and then divide. I mean, I don't know if easier is even the right word. I think it's exactly the same level of difficulty, but x minus 3 is equal to 0. So the answer is 0. You're going to grid in 0. I know that's a weird number to grid in. It's not any weirder than any other, but it always feels like, why did I bother doing the problem if the answer was just 0? All right, next up. One of the factors of 2x cubed plus 14x squared plus 24x is x plus b, where b is a positive constant. What is one possible value of b? All right, my perspective on this is that I think I'm going to be successful if I try to like algebraically manipulate this thing. I don't think it's the best way. So I look at it, I'm like, everything has a 2 in it, everything has an x in it, take out 2x. And then you have 2x quantity, x squared plus 7x plus 12. X squared plus 7x plus 12 can be factored, and it factors, but again, it's like, do you want to factor? It factors into x plus 3, x plus 4. And then the question is, we have x plus b. B is a positive constant, so at this point, I know that b is either 3 or b is 4. Either of those would be acceptable. I do think, though, that it's probably better to just graph this thing, right? You have a calculator, use the calculator. If we graph it, we see this. Once you see that minus 4, 0, or negative 4, 0, the negative 4 is the result of setting the factor equal to 0, so that must have come from x plus 4. So that would give you 4 as an option. Or the minus 3 would have come from x plus 3, where 3 is an option. Either one of those is like perfect and you should just go for it. So I think the graphing is better than what I did, but what I did also will definitely work. So, know your available options and also know what you're good at and what you're not good at, right? So if the calculator makes you feel more comfortable, just graph an answer because you're going to get the answer. Whereas my method, I think I'm going to get the answer all the time, but the calculator is definitely going to do a better job. All right, 34. Table shows the distribution of class sizes for the 109 classes of a high school. What is the median class? Median is the middle number. It's not the mean, it's the middle one. Median class size at the high school. All right, so if you have 109 classes, then, so think about that. You can break that into 3 buckets, right? There's stuff below the median, stuff above the median, and the median. If you have 109, that means that like 108 of them will be on either side, which means there's 54 classes on either side of the median. And then class number 55 is the exact middle, so it is the median. So I just need to know where class number 55 is going to fall. So I started at the top and I said, all right, so there's just 10 total at this point, right? Because it's class size is 21, there's 10 of them. But then class size of 22, there's 13 of them. So at that point, there's 23 total classes when we've lined them all up. From smallest to biggest, we've got up to 23 total at this point. Now there's 30 that have 23 students, so when we put them all in a line, that'll get us up to 53 total classes, which means because there's 36 in the next bunch, the 55th class in order is definitely in there. And because the 55th class is in there, that means that the median class size must be 24. So I think that 24 is definitely the answer. And that's how I would have done it. But after I did it, I kind of realized it's faster to go in the other direction. Not that that really matters, but here there would just be 20 total, and then there would have been 56 total. And from there you can see like once you get above the 55th class, when you're at 56, you're above 55. It must have been in there too. So either approach would have gotten us the answer. I don't really think it matters one way or the other. All right, let's look at the next one. When Arbin walks from home to class, he burns 4.2 calories per minute. So that's per minute. When he rides his bike from home to class, he burns 5.1 calories per minute. Now, the reason I'm focusing on minutes here is because now the question is a jerk. If Arbin spent a total of 2 hours, hours are not minutes, walking and biking, and burned a total of 531 calories. How many minutes did he spend walking? This problem is supposed to be done in minutes. So 2 hours is 120 minutes. I'm a little surprised they don't tell you there are 60 minutes in an hour, even though that's like very common knowledge. I don't know how they choose. I think there are 50 states is also common knowledge, but I guess people all over the world take the SAT, so that's probably why. All right, so how many minutes did he spend walking? So I want walking to be the focus of all the math that I do. So I'm going to let X be the minutes that are spent walking. And if X is the minutes spent walking and you spend 120 total minutes, then you must have spent 120 minus X doing the other thing, which is riding a bike in this case. So from this, we can get an equation, right? We know it's 4.2 calories per minute while walking times X minutes. So 4.2 times X. And then 5.1 calories per minute while riding. So that'll be 5.1 times 120 minus X. Make sure you got those parentheses there or it's not going to work. And then the total calories is 531. So if we just think about it, we can get that. I went ahead and just used solve on the calculator, which, is definitely the fastest way. So I did solve. I got X equals 90. If you don't have solve available or you don't know how to use it, I definitely recommend if you do have it, you learn how to use it. You could also graph. So I also just graphed both sides. So I graphed, 4.2x plus 5.1 times the quantity 120 minus x. Didn't simplify it, just literally graphed that. And then I also graphed 531. I zoomed out a bunch so that I could actually find this thing. And you can see the ordered pair is 90, 531. So at 90 minutes walking, I guess, that's our answer. So that's what you would grid in, 90. All right, let's look at another one. This is like a real geometry problem here. Sort of. I mean, it's not that bad, but in the circle shown, point O is the center and diameter UX bisects WY at point Z. That's too much reading. The radius of the circle is 6, and XZ is 2. If WZ is square root of X, which is a strange choice, what is the value of X? Actually, I said it's a strange choice. I think it's not a strange choice because it's going to make our math a little bit easier. Let's label things. All right, so we got a radius, and that radius, to me, is also going to be the hypotenuse of a right triangle. We also know that XZ is 2, so that little segment there is 2. And if OX is also a radius, OX would be 6. So it's 6 all the way, but 2 of them are accounted for. So the remaining part must be 4 here from O to Z. And then the other part is WZ. So WZ is this little segment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw this just so it looks the way I like. So we got a triangle. I'm going to put all the parts. And we're just trying to find X, right? So Pythagorean theorem. So 4 squared plus the square root of X squared should be 6 squared, which is 36. 4 squared is 16. So I'm basically solving this in my head, but, use a calculator, as I've said many times. So 36 minus 16 is 20, and radical X squared is X. So X equals radical 20. Sorry, X equals 20. Why would I say radical there? I don't know. X is 20. That's the answer. I don't think there's really a better way to do that problem, and that's how I would have done it. What I'm saying is I don't really have an alternative approach that was or you could do this. No, you got to know the Pythagorean theorem. You got to know some stuff about circles. In particular, the radius is really important. Look for the radius everywhere, right? Every time you go from the center to any point on the circumference, you are getting the radius. All right, next up. 3738, refer to the following information. At a certain location in the Columbia River, the velocity of the water flow at different depths was measured. The scatter plot gives 11 measurements. That's good because you don't want to have to count all those dots. 11 measurements of the velocity in feet per second of the water at various depths, d in feet. Line of best fit for the data is also shown. So lines of best fit are important. I guess they come up a lot. According to the line of best fit, what is the predicted velocity in feet per second at a depth of 4 feet? So depth is on the horizontal axis. Look for 4 on the horizontal. It's right there. And then you just go up until you hit that line, and you can see that's happening at 1.2. That's our answer, and that's what I'd grid in. It's a surprisingly straightforward question, I think, for the end, but that's okay. Because the next one, I would almost certainly get wrong if I was rushing through the exam. So for what fraction of the data points? So we answered a question very similar to this before, but it wasn't about the fraction. It was just about the total. And in my mind likes to latch on and just be it's the same question. It's not the same question. This is what fraction of the data points in the scatter plot is the velocity of the water flow predicted by the line of best fit greater than the measured velocity. So the measured velocity is the dots. Like when you look at the graph, it's the dots. Those are the measured velocities. The predicted ones are the points on the actual line that you can see. And we want the point on the line to be bigger or higher up than the dot. That's what we're looking for. So here we go. Those are the points, the actual observed values that are lower than the predicted value. So now the question is, how many of them are there? Well, I mean, you can also like put these in if you feel a pressing need. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 times. And I guarantee you, if I was taking the SAT, that's what I would have gridded in, because I don't read the questions as well as I'm telling you to read the questions. Do as I say, not as I do. So 5 times, but we're looking for fraction, and they also tell us there's 11 total measurements, so the answer is going to be 5 divided by 11 total, which is 5 over 11. That's what you should grid in. All right, that's the entirety of this. I hope my rambling about some of these problems is helpful to someone, and good luck.